Geoff, then Dr. Tin, Dr. Lisa, and then Dr. Caine. Then we will move to Q&A, and then we will wrap up for the evening. So before we get started, we wanted to ask our SMAC Nation to answer one question for us. This question is whether you are for, against, or on the fence regarding the vaccination. So if you're for the vaccination, we would appreciate if you would put a V for vaccination. That means you've either had it, you're thinking about definitely getting it when it becomes available to you, or you have had your first shot. If you're against the vaccination, please put an N for no and explain why briefly. And then if you're on the fence, put an F for fence and also explain why you might be on the fence. We will use this information at the end of the show to pull a couple of those to provide to the our panelists so that they can maybe answer some questions, dispel some myths or anything that you may be concerned about regarding the vaccination. So without further ado, let me introduce the three doctors that returned from the first show. And we have a new doctor, and I will introduce her as well. Starting with Dr. Geoffrey Mount-Varner. Dr. Geoffrey Mount-Varner is a decisions expert and board certified ER physician. He was on the front lines of Hurricane Katrina while deployed with the National Guard of Maryland as a physician in 2005. He served as the chief and chair of a large urban ER during the H1N1 pandemic of 2009. He was appointed by the mayor of Washington, D.C. as the Emergency Services Medical Director and Assistant Chief to lead the emergency response of the Ebola crisis of 2014. He currently works on the front lines of the ER of this current COVID-19 pandemic. America's split-second decisions expert, Geoffrey Mount-Varner, is a best-selling author, international speaker, ER physician, and executive. Dr. Geoffrey, Harvard educated, has 25 years of making split-second decisions that were truly life and death. He holds degrees and or medical training from schools that include Hampton, Harvard, Wayne State, George Washington, University of Maryland, Shock Trauma, and Johns Hopkins Universities. Dr. Geoffrey lives in Maryland with his wife, 17-year-old daughter, and 14-year-old son. Thank you, Dr. Geoff, for joining us again on our show. Next, we have Dr. Britton, AKA Dr. Tin, is a board-certified anesthesiologist for 18 years and is currently an attending physician at UCLA Medical Center. She is a United States Naval veteran who was deployed to Iraq during the Operation Iraqi Freedom war efforts. As a patient advocate and community activist, Dr. Britton developed and co-hosts a talk show forum where she aims to empower women, provide medical education, and raise awareness toward issues that plague underserved communities in an effort to create solutions. She also co-starred on Bravo TV's Married to Medicine Los Angeles and is currently launching a new skincare line fabulously named Famous AF. Welcome. She enjoys crafting, singing, and spending time with her husband and two children in Southern California. We are so happy to have you back, Dr. Tin. Thanks you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Next, we have Dr. Lisa. Dr. Lisa Coleman has been a health and wellness champion and team builder for over 25 years. She has successfully established corporate and non-corporate collaborations to facilitate the exchange of wellness tips, habits, and concepts such as stress management. Dr. Coleman served 7 years in the Army National Guard as a medic while she earned her Doctor of Pharmacy degree from Florida A&M University. She has worked in the pharmaceutical industry for over 20 years, and she has developed and led global clinical trials. Her primary role is supporting regulatory inspections of clinical trials, which includes the FDA and other regulatory bodies. Dr. Coleman is the founder of the Choose Joy Now network, which focuses on inspiring and supporting women to live a full life of passion and joy right now. She lives in Indianapolis, Indiana, with her husband and 2 children. Dr. Coleman is known for her creativity, infectious laugh, and enthusiasm. She invites you to join her on the journey of enlightenment and joy. Welcome again, Dr. Lisa, to the show. Next, we have Dr. Virginia A. Caine. She is one of the top doctors of the infectious diseases in the United States. Woohoo! She is the director and chief medical officer of the Marion County Public Health Department. She is an associate professor of medicine at Indiana University School of Medicine Infectious Diseases Division. She is an Indiana University bicentennial professor. She served as the president for the American Public Health Association, the nation's oldest and largest public health organization. She received the BioCrossroads 2017 August M. Watanabe Life Sciences Champion of the Year Award. In 2020, the Indianapolis Business Journal, IBJ, named her as one of the 40 influential people of the past 40 years, and they celebrate 40 years of progress in Indianapolis. Dr. Caine works tirelessly to promote and advance public health throughout innovative programs and unprecedented collaborations. Her boundless energy, vision, and drive to serve people, especially disadvantaged areas, have led Dr. Caine to have her fingerprints on numerous projects. She serves on the National Medical Association NMA COVID-19 Task Force. She also serves on the Indiana Department of Health Indiana COVID-19 Vaccine Advisory Committee. Dr. Caine earned her medical degree at the New York Upstate Medical Center in Syracuse. She completed her internal medicine residency at the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. She received her infectious diseases fellowship training at the University of Washington in Seattle. Thank you, Dr. Caine, for joining us for the first time on our show. So, okay, now that we have
thank you, I'm honored, and I've got to try out that new products that they say that are great for the skin. So thank you, Dr. Tin. I'm looking forward.
Dr. Caine, I got you. I got you. Don't worry about nothing. I got you.
I want some too.
Oh, now see, Dr. Geoff, come on now.
All right, everyone. So we got together about 3 weeks ago, and a few things have changed. First thing is the Johnson & Johnson vaccination is now available. Secondly, there have been 1.6 million additional cases of COVID in the United States. And unfortunately, 40,000 of those have resulted in death. And I'm going to tell you, after the show, I had people calling me, texting me, DMing me. The doctors were getting pinged, and just everyone would love the show, for one. And secondly, it changed the minds of a lot of people with respect to whether or not they wanted to take the vaccination. I know personally, my mom was not going to take it. And my mom is a hard person, so if you can get her to stop, to change her mind and do something different, you've done a great job. So my mom called me the very next day and told me, I signed up. I'm going to get my first shot on February 23rd. So she got her first shot. So thank you so much, because I tried to talk to her. And, we needed the people like yourself to help kind of steer it and just really understand what's going on with it. A lot of people don't know everything about what's happening with the vaccination. Is it safe? Which one is better than the other, and so forth. So that's why we're here today, to really, help out the SMAC Nation community here to understand that, this is an okay thing to do, and why. So thank you so much again for being on the show. I just want to stop here because we need the time to really hear the doctors. So we're going to start with you, Dr. Geoff, again, because things have changed. I know you've been really at the forefront a lot of this. Is there any new information regarding the vaccination, regarding COVID, or anything that you'd like to share with SMAC Nation?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank SMAC for having me here. Michelle, thank you. To my fellow panelists, to my HBCU world, and to the Divine Nine, Alpha Phi Alpha. Thank you very much. A lot has changed, and I am sure that many of my panelists, colleagues will address that. But I think there's some things that we have to keep in mind. The modeling shows that the virus is still spreading, especially since the new strain is here. And keep in mind, only about 25% of people have been vaccinated. Now, it's very important to keep in mind that what we do while waiting to be vaccinated is absolutely essential. For instance, there are 5 places that are accountable for 80% of the transmissions. 5 places. Those are restaurants, bars and cafes, meaning like Starbucks, places of worship, gyms, and hotels, with restaurants being accountable for 40% of those transmissions. What is my point? The point is we've got to still protect ourselves now, because while we're waiting for the vaccines to come in and for everyone to get them, unfortunately, several thousand people are still going to die if we don't maintain our appropriate precautions. Now, let's just talk about something just like real quick. There's this hesitancy that they're putting out on us. Follow me just real quick. Follow me. In fact, put a 1 in the comment section right now if you are following me, because I don't want to move too fast because they only give me 8 minutes. So I got to move. All right. Before the vaccine even came out, we heard about all this hoopla. Blacks are not being a part of the study, so forth and so on. That was setting us up. Here's why. The studies show that Blacks are about 10% part of these studies. Guess what? Blacks make up about 10 to 12% of the US. So we were doing our part, but it was setting us up. Let me go to the next part here. Then they started to say, hey, there's this hesitancy and Blacks don't want it. Well, let's slow down a little bit. Slow down. The studies are now showing that about 10 to 12% of Blacks are hesitant. Nationally, overall, everybody, about 10% of everyone is hesitant. 30% of the military is hesitant. So where did that come from? And then when we look at the latest numbers, 67% of those who have been vaccinated are white, and I'm happy for them. But only 9% of those who have been vaccinated are Black. What is my point? Somehow it was set up that Blacks did not want this, and that picture played out, and it wasn't true. Don't be fooled into thinking that there's something the matter with this vaccine, and therefore you don't get vaccinated. Now, I get it. Many of you all have questions like, well, they made this vaccine so fast, I'm just not sure. Good question. Follow me real quick. Do me a favor. Put a 9 in the chat, put a 9 in the comment section. Let me know if I'm moving too fast. Put a 9 in there. Now follow me. The vaccines usually take anywhere from 54 to 72 months to make. 54 to 72 months to make. We did this vaccine in about 10 to 11 months. So yes, it was done fast. It was done extremely fast. But here's why. Usually for a vaccine, speaking very broadly, there's a preclinical phase, the clinical phase, the manufacturing phase, and the distribution. It's done just like that. Preclinical, clinical, manufacturing, and the distribution. One step after the other. And most of the time it's been the manufacturing and the distribution phase. Stay with me. I know this sounds boring, but here, I've got to be honest. Let me tell you what I try to do. is to make you a super user, meaning to present this in such a way that you can go out and share with everyone else and you can speak with confidence. But back to this, again, there's a preclinical phase, the clinical phase, the manufacturing, and the distribution phase. Most of the time it's been the manufacturing and the distribution phase. But because of all the money and all the resources that were put into this, we were able to move through those phases a lot faster because of all the money and all the resources. Did you hear me say earlier that most of the time it's been the manufacturing and the distribution phase? We had so many resources, we were able to do that at the same time. I get it. Some of you all out there are scientists, and you're saying, well, how do you move through the clinical trials so fast? Because people across the world raised their hand, and we had plenty of people who enrolled in the clinical trials. And unfortunately, there was enough disease in the population that people were able to go out there and get naturally infected. So we were able to get through the clinical trials faster. And in fact, usually you do clinical trials, you've got to raise money. We didn't have to do that because we have plenty of money. And the FDA was right there looking over the research. Hence, there were no steps skipped. In fact, it could be argued that this was the most regulated and watched vaccine or drug or clinical trial ever. So rid yourself of thinking it was made too fast. Now, let me go back. Some of you are asking the question right now, those 5 places that I mentioned, why are those places the most places where 80% of the transmissions happen? Real quick, here's why. In order for you to get infected with COVID, I know I'm moving kind of fast. All right, put a 0 in the chat if you need me to slow down, and a 6 to speed up. And okay, I see a bunch of zeros. Okay, no, 6 speed up. Okay, great. All right, usually you like need 1 to 1,000 active particles in order for you to get infected. 1 to 1,000. Got that? Let's go over here. Every time, if I am COVID positive, every time I breathe out anywhere between 100,000 and 10 million active particles. 100,000 and 10 million active particles. How many do we say needed to get, how many particles do you need to get infected? Anywhere from 1 to 1,000. An active person who has COVID, every time they breathe, 100,000 to 10 million. What's my point? In those places, there's a large concentration of viruses. There's a large concentration of active virulence. You want to stay away from those areas where there's a large concentration of active virulence. And also, because these new strains are here, and we will talk about them later, they're more infectious and more lethal. So while we're waiting for the vaccines to really come on board for everyone to get them, what's most important is for you to continue to wear your mask, continue to socially distance. In fact, I will even go a step further and follow what Dr. Fauci says. He recommends wearing 2 masks. Why? Because these new strains are more infectious, meaning more contagious. So we've got to up our game and do something more. So in the end, I just want to say, whatever you do, protect your family, protect yourself, and make sure you are vaccinated so that you're here with us this time next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on to Dr. Ten.
All right. So I'm just going to assume that everybody wants to get vaccinated. Okay. I'm just going to assume that. And I know that people have been having struggles with trying to find where to get vaccinated. So I'm just going to give a few little tips, pearls, that kind of thing. So for people who want to get vaccinated, don't know where to go, start with your primary care doctor. Okay. That's a good resource if you have one, to start there. Remember, your local pharmacies are starting to administer these vaccines. So give a call into them, see if they have the vaccines. You can also check out your places of worship. So now the government have included these places as trying to get that outreach, that spread into the community. So those are places you can also look to as well. You also have community health clinics. They're federally funded. They're typically around for primary care, preventative medicine. Can't speak tonight. And so the government is also supplying them with vaccinations as well. And then you have your state and local healthcare departments. So if I'm in California, I would go to the California Department of Health, look on their website and find out where the nearest vaccination place is in my area. And if all this sounds like a big jumbled mess, which I may have made it sound that way, just go to the CDC's website, cdc.gov, and just do a search for where do I get vaccinated, and they'll direct you to where you need to go based on the state that you live in. So cdc.gov will help you out with that. Now, assuming that you are going to get vaccinated, you know where to go. Now people are asking the question, well, which vaccine is best? Which vaccine should I get? And to that, I would say the vaccine that's available to you is the best vaccine to get, whichever one's available. Because when you get caught up in the minutia of all these different percentages of effectiveness, you start to lose focus on the bigger picture. First of all, within these studies, these trials, Pfizer and Moderna start their trials way before the variants. So when Johnson & Johnson started their trials, it affected their numbers. Also, their outcome points, or what they were trying to achieve, were different amongst the different companies. So like in terms of defining what severe outcomes are, or severe illness, Johnson & Johnson said, well, severe illness is a positive COVID test plus one symptom. Maybe a cough. Well, that doesn't sound very severe, but that's what they claimed was severe in their trials. And it's been different for Pfizer and Moderna. So the way they set up their trials are different. The outcomes they were looking for are different. The way they define things are different. So you're really comparing apples to oranges. To say that one is, 95% effective, and then this one is 94%, but it's, 85% if you're 65 and above, and this one is 72%, but it's 85% if you have severe, preventing severe. Just don't get caught up in the minutia. I think the biggest picture, the biggest takeaway from these vaccines is that so far, all three of them are 100% effective in preventing death. That much we know. So far, all three are 100% effective at preventing death. So that will be the take home with that. Whichever one is available, that's the best one. Now, the CDC did come out with some new guidelines, just a couple real changes to just kind of lead you in the direction of what you should be doing now that you've been vaccinated, right? Because now that people are getting vaccinated, they want to party all the time and get out there. So the CDC said, okay, listen, number one, if you are fully vaccinated, and that means you're 2 weeks after the second dose of Pfizer and Moderna, or 2 weeks after the one shot of Johnson & Johnson, if you're fully vaccinated, you can gather indoors with other fully vaccinated people without a mask. Makes sense. The other thing they said was, if you are fully vaccinated, you can gather indoors with non-vaccinated people of one household, just one household, even if they're unvaccinated, okay? And you don't have to wear a mask unless those unvaccinated people are at an increased risk for having severe illness from COVID, meaning they're 65 and older. They have multiple medical conditions like obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure. If they have any of those things that put them at a higher risk of having severe disease, then everybody should wear a mask, okay? So those are really the two big changes. Other than that, the things that have not changed whether you are vaccinated or not, is if you are, you still want to avoid medium to large crowds, right? You still want to stay inside if you can. You want to decrease or limit your travel, domestic and international. You want to continue to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds, use hand sanitizer that has at least 60% alcohol content. And you want to continue to mask up. If you're out in public, wear a mask. And I want to use this analogy. Wearing a mask out in public is the equivalent of wearing a condom if you out there tricking off, okay? So let's go down this road, okay? So if you out there wilding out, willy-nilly, you got this piece, that piece, and you just out there, you got to wear a condom, right? You got to protect yourself. You don't know what they got. They don't know what you got. You don't know their status. You strap up. So it's the same principles with wearing a mask. You got to mask up, okay? You got to strap up because you don't know what's out there. And even if you're vaccinated, let's just say you're vaccinated, you could bring it home to a neighbor, to a work colleague. Maybe your house is vaccinated, but that doesn't mean everybody in your surroundings are. So it's that's the analogy I like to use. It's just like wearing a condom. I mean, it might feel good to be out there having a good time, but you're going to pay the price later, okay? We know that these mitigation strategies are working. We've seen a huge decrease in flu this season. right? Let's talk about the flu. It's been nearly silenced. We've had a 98% decrease in hospitalizations in the United States this flu season compared to last season. 98% decrease in hospitalizations. So we know these mitigation strategies are working. It's not just from getting more flu vaccines. There's more to it. We've had 1 child die this season as opposed to 200 that died last year during the flu season. So this stuff is really working. And, you know, there's been several studies that have come up earlier this year about wearing masks, how effective they are. They not only decrease transmission, but they also decrease the severity of infection should you get COVID, right? So that means they defined it as you're either mildly symptomatic or you're even asymptomatic. So masks work. They're simple, they're inexpensive, they're non-invasive, and, you know, they work. So we understand to go, you know, barefaced, raw dog, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to wear the mask. We're going to strap up and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Caine. And thank you for keeping it real, because I think people can resonate with that. Okay.
Right.
I appreciate you. Thanks. So Dr. Lisa.
Yeah. Well, first I'm thinking, well, maybe that could be the new motto.
Right? Mask up, strap it up.
Yeah. So for me, the thing that I really want to stress is, if possible, for each one of us to go beyond our immediate household to ensure that either the elderly or those who don't have access to technology has a way to get this information, whether it's sharing this video or going to the CDC website, so that they can make their own decision. Because unfortunately, some elderly, again, they may not know how to, you know, navigate the website. Yeah. And some people just don't have access to technology. So, you know, be a light to, you know, your extended family and your community to try to make sure that they have the information that they need to make the decision. And then if they decide, yes, that they do want the vaccine, again, take a step to help them get scheduled and or take them to the vaccination site. I learned that basically I'm somewhat privileged in that Indiana is really good as far as how they have things set up for you to be able to schedule a vaccine. When I tried to schedule things for my parents, it was horrible. I mean, I ultimately was able to get through 211 to get them scheduled, but I was determined. I believe this can cause a lot of other people to just say, well, I'll just wait until herd immunity takes place. I don't have time to sit on the phone or the computer to try to navigate to find a site. Please, you know, encourage people, help them to, like I said, get the information, even if it's sitting there with your phone or whatever, to show them this video or other videos on the CDC website to make that decision, and then taking a step further to help get them registered. Again, and I don't know if Dr. Caine can speak to this. I know the CDC is trying to work on the whole health equity thing as far as helping you know, underserved populations get access to the vaccines. So hopefully in the future, they'll put some things in place that will help, you know, make that easier for those who don't have access to technology. But in the meantime, I feel we can all just kind of be our brother's keeper. You know, it takes a village, you know, to help keep us all safe. So that's the main thing I want to say. And then one plug I just have to say is, again, if you're a person of color, you know, consider getting into a clinical trial. You could go to clinicaltrials.gov to see if there's a trial in your area for whatever, you know, ailment. But the more we get, you know, Black folk and people of color to participate in clinical trials, it would just be better for us all, as well as physicians of color to be investigators. Because again, more people of color may be willing to sign up for a trial if they see someone like them, you know, trusting and things like that. So just had to throw that plug in. So that's it.
Thank you. That's actually a very good point. I think from the last show, what people have told me, their comfort level had increased just seeing people that look like them telling them like it is. And so, like, to your point, if they're investigators, if they're participants, And the more that takes place, maybe we will get to a point where our comfort level is restored and that we are more engaged in taking measures to participate in these type of trials going forward. So thank you for plugging that up. That's actually a good plug for people to hear that we need you.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you again, Dr. Lisa, for that. Now we're going to move to Dr. Caine. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. So I'm just going to talk about just a few aspects related to some of the prior conversations I have heard. First, let me just say about how short it seems like we developed this vaccine. We have a sister who is the lead scientist at NIH developing one of the vaccines, which is the Moderna vaccine. And they used a new platform called messenger RNA technology. And although this is the first time we use this technology on a human person, we've actually been working on this particular technology for about 8 years prior to doing it with humans, but we've used it on clinical models and we've tested it for different side effects and everything. So we had all of the pieces in place at the time, and it was purposely, that research was done purposely to try to be able to shorten the amount of time it produces a vaccine. So know that a Dr. Corbett, African-American female, sorry guys, she just sharp, brilliant to be honest, selected by Dr. Anthony Fauci to help do all of that research related to that. And I say that because, people be in accidents, right? And you might require a blood transfusion. So, everybody's heard about blood transfusion, but I don't know how many people realize that Dr. Charles Drew, an African-American of Black, was the first person who discovered plasma. And if it wasn't for his science and his discovery, we wouldn't have blood transfusions. How many lives has that saved? So we have a sister who we know has been committed to saving lives. And so I think we've got some trusted folks from our communities who've been doing wonderful things. So I just want to set that out to you. Went to University of Maryland in Baltimore. She's just done an incredible job. And she started getting an internship at NIH when she was in college. So she had been working there for a long time. And I'm glad to say they know how to recognize talent and understand the science related to that. So that's my first point. And I want to move to the second point, which was a major reason why I considered why I needed to get a vaccine. I think we need to remember about the 5 to 10% of individuals who actually get COVID-19 develop long-term effects and complications from the actual COVID-19.
Yes.
So people get chronic fatigue syndrome, okay? That means you're so tired, it's just a chore to just get out of bed in the morning to make it to the restroom. You're so exhausted during the entire day. You don't have hours where I feel good, I've got good energy, and now I'm exhausted. No, you were exhausted continually. This goes on for months, and people can't even keep their jobs, okay? That they're so exhausted. Now, that's just one of the side effects from just having COVID-19. The other one is this particular virus gets across the blood-brain barrier. It impacts the brain. You can get something called brain fog. You have this difficulty in concentrating, even thinking about simple things that you and I take for granted. I can go to a store and I can buy something that's $11, but because of my complications and the impact on my brain from brain damage, I can't even do the simple calculations about what should be the amount of my change. But we start having memory losses, okay? You know I had a roommate in college, maybe if I went to school, and I could see her face, but I just for the life of me can't remember her name. And it's somebody that I talk to maybe once a month, all of the time. But it can also cause inflammation of your heart, myocarditis, where you can start seeing early heart failure, you know, in your 20s and your 30s, where we don't normally see that until you're 60 years or older. It can cause acute kidney damage. Ladies, it can even, sorry guys, but ladies, it's known to cause hair loss. So we can have where it's impacting so many different organs of the body. You may be left with shortness of the breath where you never had a problem about that before. You may be having arrhythmias, rapid beats of your heart on a constant basis. You may have chronic headaches, okay? So what am I saying here? That for someone who gets a vaccination, I may have side effects from 18 hours to maybe at the most 48 hours. Sometimes it can last a little bit longer from the side effects of the vaccine, but I really want to take my chances related to that, then I may be vulnerable to being a long-term complication from the vaccine. And hey, I don't know what happened to me. This is crazy. But after the age of 29, for whatever reason, food tastes wonderful to me. I love the taste of food. I shouldn't say that. And I wouldn't want my place to burn down because I can't smell. You know, sometimes, I hate to say this, I may leave my coffee pot running and I said, oh, I'm smelling something. So loss of smell, loss of taste can last for a long time. But like Dr. Jeffrey and some of our other people stated, I don't want to get that virulent, very contagious strain because I think it can be associated with more severe complications than what we're experiencing now. And I need to get my vaccine early enough so I know it's going to be effective and it works prior to if I wait too much longer. So, hey, I got my Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Okay.
And so, hey, I feel great. I only had one thing happen to me. I had a little sore arm, okay? But I took my little Tylenol, 30 minutes, it disappeared. I had no pain and I felt great.
Thank you so much, Dr. Caine. And I'm glad you talked about the long-term effects of COVID. I've had people personally I know who have experienced some of those long-term effects. And, you know, quite frankly, at first they didn't even know that that was what was going on. It was just like, all of a sudden I know something and now I don't. My hair is falling out on me. What's going on? Is this an old person thing? But then they can go back and say, oh, COVID. And so some people forget about that. And you would much rather, to your point, have the 18 to 24 hour inconvenience, you know, feeling a little woozy or whatever the case may be from the actual vaccination, as opposed to having these long-term effects that could progressively get worse. We don't
Michelle,
know.
I forgot to mention one thing. You know, people get COVID, especially Blacks, because we had 2.8 times getting hospitalized. We're at a higher rate of deaths, but we may be in that intensive care unit. And Dr. Tim will know about this as an anesthesiologist, but we're in those intensive care units, maybe on a respirator for weeks or months. And once you are away from that experience, if you survive, you know, something may just trigger that anxiety and depression that was associated with being involved there so long. So you don't, from being in a setting like that, you don't escape some of those triggers. You may even feel you've got post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah, we're still all learning. I mean, this is still very new in a sense. And so these things are continuing to unfold. So thank you so much, Dr. Caine, for bringing that insight on kind of the long-term effects. And, you know, surely I think it's important. And, you know, you're the first person I heard that had the J&J vaccination. So that's one shot, correct? And you're
One
done.
shot, okay? You know, I don't want to say I have a fear of needles, but I appreciate having just one shot.
Very good, very good. Well, I am looking here on Facebook and it is blowing up. There's a lot of questions, comments, and whatnot. So I am going to take this moment to turn it over to the moderators that have been watching Facebook. And, you know, any of one of you, Sonia, Cheryl, Angela, have at it.
It looks like that most of the questions were thoroughly answered just by the discussion from the doctors. So there's been a lot of other discussion that's been going on. But one thing that was brought out that I'm wondering, Dr. Caine, if you could address, there, Candyman made a comment. So there are a ton of comments in the thread, but she made a comment that the last Myrna testing in 2017 and 2018 failed miserably. So why is there such great dependence upon it for efficacy now?
So I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
She made the statement that the last Myrna testing in 2017 and 2018 failed miserably.
You're talking about mRNA technology?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, gotcha. So, you know what? I can't answer that particular reason. And let me just say this. I was just getting off a national federal committee that was put together by Obama when I first got on. And this is the federal committee that looks at all public health preparedness across the country and the hospital systems, but it also specifically looks at industry from the pharmaceutical standpoint and barter and research. And they have various research, smaller companies, but some of the larger companies, each trying to do research on a specific aspect of the messenger RNA technology. And in the messenger RNA technology, this is a component, a part of everybody's body cells, okay? And so the vaccine is a man-made product. It's a piece of a protein that attacks the spike receptor on a virus. So while that technology may have failed earlier, and different people can attack that technology on different components of the virus, we have now identified that it seems like the S protein receptor was the one that's the most crucial and was the most effective one in order to be successful. And so I can decide on that virus, which part of the virus I want to attack and use. But if I select the wrong virus, meaning that maybe I got one of the little lieutenants or just a lower level servant, but I needed to have gotten the general to take them out in order to be effective. I'm trying to do it sort of like in layman's terms. So sometimes you have the ability to use that technology on different protein receptors, but if you don't select the right one, you may not be effective. And I think that this most recent technology highlighted that they were very successful selecting the right receptor to attack.
Thank you so much.
Sonia or Angie, anything you see on there?
I am looking also from Candyman, who said something about the bar being low when it comes to EUA, and she was waiting on FDA approval, and then she may take the vaccine. So she was a solid no. She's not on the fence.
So I don't know if I should answer this, but so what happens is based on, you have phase 1 trials, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 3 trials are where you have to have a large number of people in the clinical trials. And you have to have at least, it's like a minimum of 30,000 or 35,000 individuals. And we've seen now, at least with Johnson & Johnson, I think they've reached over 65,000 people that they've vaccinated. But this is an emergency authorization from the FDA, and then a second evaluation from the Centers for Disease Control, ACIP immunization committee that they have tons of expertise. And so right now, how many millions of people have been vaccinated so far? We've had almost 98 million folks that have been vaccinated in this country. It's not only this country, but we do look at data of who's been vaccinated in the surrounding countries. So we have a significant amount of information, but granted, it's not like our usual vaccines because those take sometimes at least over a year of us looking at all data. And so all these pharmaceutical companies have agreed that they're going to continue to monitor these vaccines and its output for at least 2 to 6 more months for any side effects. But I do want to remind you again, how many people have died sitting on the fence? How many of us have died sitting on the fence? How many of us, with our immune systems, sometimes based on sometimes we are frontline folks, we are exposed to a higher rate of virus because we don't always have the ability to telecommute. And now you're going to face these more resistant strains. If you can stay in your house and never leave, never let anybody inside your house, then hey, maybe you're okay. You can take your time making a decision. But if you have anyone coming inside your house, you got to go outside for some reason and intermingle with people out in the community, because you can't tell whether someone's got COVID-19, not by looking at them, because they feel great, okay? And just normal speaking is going to put these invisible droplets in the air, and that person can go and leave, but those respiratory droplets will remain in the air, and someone just got to come up in that same space and inhale, and you are infected.
That's a good point. So, for example, you know how you see people walk out of the store and the first thing they do is whip that mask off because they felt like they've been trapped? So are we advising that maybe we should leave it on at least until we get to our cars?
I think you stand a better chance if you're outdoors. The wind may blow away those respiratory droplets once you're outside the store. But you know what? I don't mind wearing my mask till I get to my car.
Okay. Yeah.
Also, oh,
Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
Annie. Go ahead.
Also from Candyman, are there any long-term effects from taking the vaccine?
So I've watched the chat and I appreciate Candyman's comments. If Candyman's, she has been on it. And the answer to that question, there's no one in the entire world who can tell you the long-term side effects of these vaccines. Yeah. Long-term being defined by 2 years, 3 years, and 5 years. Why? Because these are new vaccines. But what we can tell you is that in the past, when we've developed vaccines and they were in the last phases of the clinical trials, most of the side effects happen in the first 8 weeks. But let me tell you what we do know. We do know that you can catch COVID today and be dead 2 weeks from now. We know you can catch COVID today and have what Dr. Caine talked about, what we call the long haul symptoms. Those are brain fog, muscle aches, chronic fatigue, post-traumatic stress, increased anxiety, and we don't know how long that will last. So what we're betting on here, again, we are betting on science. And I've been watching the chat. I'll even challenge you all with some of these questions. Some of the questions you're asking about this vaccine, great questions. But let me ask you this. What do you know about the blood pressure medicine you are taking? Share. Let's talk about the long-term side effects of that. Or what about the flu shot? Let's talk about the long-term side effects of that. What is my point? Let's be very careful not to put such a standard on this vaccine that we wind up missing out on it. And if there's anything you can do, is contact your clergy, your councilmen, your elected officials, just to make sure that the vaccine is at least available in our communities.
And I want to add one more point. I am part of the National Medical Association. That's the oldest and Black physician group in the country. And I've been on some prior vaccine task force that we reviewed vaccines, and we have not always, our organization, we have not always approved some new vaccines that have come out. But we've spent an extensive amount of research related to each of these vaccines. We have talked to these pharmaceutical companies and their top science medical folks more than once. And we've got this list of, my God, if you saw the questions that we asked and the answers that we have to receive, we've done an extensive job related to this, that we are feeling very comfortable, at least with the current 3 vaccines, that we are saying that we are endorsed and approved that people should be getting these 3 vaccines. That may not be the case for other vaccines that are coming up, being presented to us. We really have to see the data. And like Dr. Jeffrey was saying earlier, we need to know that it's enough of us, people of color, in these clinical trials, because we're different, okay? So we on certain medications, we may react differently, okay?
And I just want to comment. I'll let Dr. Tin address it, because she had touched on it the very first time. I'm watching the chat here, and Mr. Stallings, thank you very much for your honesty. The question of this Tuskegee experiment has come up, and while that happened, and that's what everyone talks about, because we can touch that. But let's be honest. The truth of it is, it's how the medical establishment system treats us to this day. How when we come into the office, sometimes they look at us differently. They make us wait longer. Studies show that if you're Black, you are more likely to have multiple primary care doctors within the same healthcare organizations. It's been proven that they don't treat our pain as well. And as a board certified emergency medicine physician, let me apologize to you for that. Let me apologize to you for that. But this is not the time. This is not the time to say, well, I don't like how y'all been treating us, so I'm gonna hold off. Because this virus can kill us right now. And I think Dr. Tin has some other comments about this the very last time.
Yeah, I mean, so the last time, it's funny because I had another discussion over the weekend with one of my best friends about how the focus has been on pushing, Black folks, they don't want the vaccine because it's Tuskegee experiments, and yeah, they don't want it. And it's like, well, okay, tell the whole truth, okay? It's not just this one aspect of our history. It's our history in its entirety, and it's also our present. And I think when you continue to push that historical component, there's not really much you can do to change it. It's on us. It's, well, Black folks, you got to get over it. Sorry. But if you say, well, no, it's actually present day. It's called systemic racism. It's, the fact that our medical system doesn't take care of us in the same way. Hell, even the criminal justice system, it could be pretty much anything that we deal with on a daily basis, right? And if you say it in those terms, then you have to say, oh, so you mean it's racism? Okay, that's something we have to address right now. So I think, and this might not even be relevant right now. Maybe we don't want to talk about this, but I just think that belaboring this whole Tuskegee experiment is just telling part of the story, as opposed to telling the story in its entirety, because that would make everyone have to face their fears, which is that racism still exists and it needs to be fixed. Because if you say it's something that happened in the past, like Tuskegee, well, But I also want to make another point about the Tuskegee experiment. For people that use it as an excuse not to get the vaccine, remember the Tuskegee experiment, if you don't know, they didn't give these men syphilis. They withheld medication that existed for syphilis. So by not getting the vaccine, it's really not the same. They're trying to give you the medicine, the vaccine, and you're saying you don't want it. So it's actually kind of an opposite. You know, it's simple. My husband always says it's the same but different. It's the same but different. So, you know, they're not giving us anything with this vaccine. Remember, they're giving it to the entire world, right? Like that wouldn't make much sense to kill off the entire world with all these conspiracy theories and stuff going around. You know, they're trying to give you the fix, give you the vaccine. Whereas with the Tuskegee, they were just not giving them the medication that they knew would fix it. They already had syphilis. They didn't give them syphilis. So yeah, that's kind of, you know, there's a whole, you know, the whole conspiracy theory about all this. It's like, yes, you might grow a third eyeball. Yes, you might have another arm coming out your head. You might have all these, they might be putting chips inside of us. You know, all these crazy conspiracy theories that I've heard, those things might happen. We might have cancer in 5 years, but you know what? I'd rather wait for the vaccine to the vaccine. Okay, I'll take the vaccine now and get the vaccine to fix the vaccine as opposed to taking my chances with COVID or being a long hauler. Because that I know right now is not good for me. That death I ain't trying to do that. And I ain't trying to be a long hauler. So that we know in the right now, we know what that looks like. We may not, you're right. We don't know what it looks like in the future of getting this vaccine, but because the whole world got it, I'm gonna wait for the vaccine, and I'm getting the vaccine right now.
Thank you. So another question, I'm sure you guys have some here too, but real quick, I know a lot of people have pets and people have been concerned about, oh, you know, now they're talking about animals getting COVID. Is there something around a vaccination for small dogs, or I don't know, you know, the species that is really, you know, in jeopardy of contracting it, but that is something that's come up. And I know some people are kind of worried about their animals. Does any of you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I do. Keep in mind that the coronavirus itself has been present in animals, especially dogs, for forever. That's why they already have a vaccination for dogs. Then also keep in mind that the coronavirus, the very broad family, there are 4 strands, there are 4 common strands that we've been living with for like years. Just so happened this version is a new strain. But back to the animals, it's been proven that dogs can get infected, but we've not proven that they can infect other people. It's been proven that humans can pass this to other animals. Let's look at Finland. It was passed to the mink, and as a result, they killed several million minks, and many countries would not allow people from Finland to take flights out of their country to another country because they were scared that those people were going to bring a different strand. So we do know that it can pass from humans to animals. We're just not sure if the animals can pass it to us.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification.
Well, I do want to say one thing because I have some cats. Okay, so if anyone has COVID-19 and you've got some pets, you got to be careful about infecting your own pet stuff.
Good point.
So, you know, you got to be sure you're washing your hands and everything. And, you know, if you're coughing and breathing, like you know, I don't know what, you shouldn't be cuddling and being real close to your pet if you can avoid it until you are considered no longer infectious. So if you can, I'm allergic to one of my cats. And, you know, I was told, hey, you got to get rid of your cat. Well, that didn't happen, of course. But there are ways how you can, you know, wash your hands and maybe put a cloth over your face or something so you're not breathing on your cat if you can. You can see I'm a real animal lover, okay?
You know what? I just got a cat exactly 2 weeks ago. And the cat came with the sniffles. Okay. The cat had a runny nose. I was like, oh my God, this cat got COVID. What did I just bring in my house? You don't even want to know how much money I spent on this dang on cat trying to figure out what's wrong with it.
No,
But
I know.
Yeah. So I asked the vet about COVID, right? And she was just like, you know what? Like you guys said, COVID is pretty common in small pets. And if they have it, if this cat has it, it's pretty unlikely that the cat will give it to your family. That's what my vet said. Now, I don't know the extent of it. She didn't seem concerned. So you know, I calmed down, but.
I think you're safe. We haven't had any evidence that it is spread from the animal to humans, but watch out, humans to animals.
To animals, yeah.
And your vet probably didn't want to keep that cat in her office any longer.
You know what? That vet was so sick of me. I must have asked her a bazillion questions. I was like, let me just apologize now. I'm a doctor and I'm like a little bit neurotic about disease. So please bear with me. She was like, okay, what now? What? I felt so bad for her. But yeah, she was like, you know what? Cat's fine. Take your cat.
I would like to say this may be a good part since Dr. Caine mentioned allergies. There was a question that came in from April Winfield. Is the J&J vaccine better for people who may possibly have allergic reactions to meds? I have seen reports of allergic reactions to the mNRAs, or is it all the same risk?
I'll answer the question. So the risk is not exactly the same. So we can get something called anaphylactic shock. It's like a severe allergic reaction that can happen. And all of a sudden, you may find your blood pressure is dropping much lower, and it can be life-threatening. Now, we do know when we look at Pfizer, they have about what they say about a little over 4 cases per 100,000 population that you can get a severe anaphylactic reaction. So, you know, people who've had and these are people usually prone to have had a severe allergic reaction before, anaphylactic reaction before, like maybe you've got a penicillin severe allergy, you may have shellfish, peanut allergy, and what have you. When you look at Moderna, they talk about you have 2 cases that may occur out of 100,000 population. And J&J is saying with their research and clinical trials that they're not seeing the same level of anaphylactic reactions compared to Moderna and Pfizer. But also remember, both Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines have been out there much longer compared to Johnson & Johnson that we're seeing now. And these reactions that you see easily treated if you are being vaccinated by a healthcare professional, knows what they're doing. You know, you hear about these EpiPens that contains a substance called epinephrine, right, and it can reverse this really easily. And so someone says, you know, like my nephew tells me, hey, you may have a higher risk of having a plane crash in a plane than you will be experiencing this allergic reaction. So the rates are very, very low. And so it's fairly safe. But I don't know, Dr. Coleman or someone else may want to pipe in related to this, because, you know, different perspectives related to that.
So I will pipe in and thank you very much for your comments. Let's just say that ERs, critical care doctors, they're prepared to treat allergic reactions. We've been doing that for like years, and we do that very, very well. More people will likely die from taking Motrin and Tylenol this summer than will die from taking this vaccine. So I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the worst, the level of concern about having an allergic reaction is probably about less than 1 out of like 10. And then keep in mind, the most at-risk group, they already know they have a sensitivity to allergies. So they're already ready. So I would not allow that to sway you too much, because that's just one of those things that was put out on social media, which is not proven to be true at all in terms of the level of risk.
So there's a question with respect to, say you have COVID, but you don't know you have it, and then you go and get the vaccination, and there's negative effects. So what I've heard is some people had really, bad effects from it. Is it just bringing it out and making it exposed, or is it actually a bad thing to try to get this vaccination while you actually have active COVID and you may not know?
So let me say what the studies are showing, and what actually a great study out of Israel shows. If you have active COVID, obviously you shouldn't be out getting vaccinated anyways. But there's a general feeling, there's this myth that people have gotten vaccinated and therefore they have gotten COVID. The studies are shown what happens is one of two things. You either had COVID and did not know it when you were vaccinated, and once you got vaccinated, it had nothing to do with you starting to show symptoms. You were going to show those symptoms outside being vaccinated or not. But yet people draw a correlation which isn't there. But this is the second most reason. And this part's key. People get vaccinated and then they go out and change their lifestyle. They go out without a mask. They go out and gather. And here's the truth. This is the part that the media does not tell you. Once you're vaccinated, you have no antibodies for at least 2 weeks, usually about 3 weeks, meaning that it's almost as if you have not been vaccinated. In other words, people get vaccinated, then they go out and they live their life in a less controlled way, and they contract the COVID that way. Whereas once you get vaccinated, you need to wait at least 3 weeks for your body to develop any antibodies at all.
That's a very good point. I think people think that once they get this vaccination, they got a license to just be free and go back to normal. And what I think I'm hearing is that no, there's some things that Dr. Ten had noted about, if you're all vaccinated and what have you, but at the end of the day, the best practice, it sounds like we still need to be safe, even in the midst, right? Mask up, right?
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Wrap it up, as Dr. Ten says. Wrap it up. And you had something?
I wanted to address what Dr. Ten said, because if you want to keep it real, it's like I had asked the question in the last show, if I have been fully vaccinated and my parents have been fully vaccinated, then we could be able to take our mask off when I go over there to take care of them. And at that point, Dr. Geoff said, no, you can't. And so I'm thinking now, based on what
everybody was fully vaccinated?
We will all be fully vaccinated this coming week. We've all had our first dose.
Well, you have to be fully vaccinated.
Right, I get that. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm saying once we're all fully vaccinated, we don't have to really strap up, right? It's almost like
no, you
birth
don't.
control.
Yeah, you good. Both of y'all are snipped, right? It's like both are fixed.
But remember, if it's Pfizer, Moderna, you gotta wait at least 2 weeks after the second dose for you to be completely vaccinated. Okay.
And I will let them know that. But I also had another question to piggyback on the 2 dose. Is there, I know we're saying that there's no difference which vaccine you get, but I've been hearing from people who have gotten their second dose of Moderna that they had a little more side effects as far as how they felt, like they felt flu symptoms or something like that. I've not heard anybody who has gotten their second dose of Pfizer yet. So you, Dr. Ten, you had the second dose of Pfizer?
I had Pfizer, and it's the same thing, flu-like symptoms. You're really fatigued. Some people have fevers, chills. One of my coworkers, she had to leave work. She felt so bad the next day.
Okay.
People were popping Tylenols. They didn't feel good. I mean, you can have some significant flu-like symptoms, I think, with both.
Okay.
And I think it just depends on how great a response, immune response your body is mounting. That's what it sounds like. You know, I do know a fair share of older or elderly people that got the second vaccine, the second shot from both Pfizer and Moderna. And they didn't have really any flu-like symptoms.
Okay.
It sounds like, and this isn't anything I've read, this is just experience and what I've learned just kind of in my environment. I've noticed that younger people tend to have a more robust immune response, and they have more severe side effects. And severe, I mean flu-like symptoms.
Right.
As opposed to older population, 65 and above, they're typically like, oh, my arm hurt, and that was it. So that's just what I've noticed.
You can tell I'm old now, because see, that's all I had.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
But Dr. Caine, on my first shot, that's all I had too. So it hurt, and my arm hurt for 3 days.
The second shot is where you feel it.
So yeah, so my parents are 84 and 83. They'll have their second shot of Pfizer Sunday. I'll have my, and so I'm wondering the onset, because I'll have my second shot of Moderna on Tuesday.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering, how do I, do I need to be there to watch them, or when are the onset of possible flu-like symptoms may come on?
Usually, I think it's 12 to 24 hours. It was the onset, and then it'll last for 12 to 24 hours after that. But it's usually after that second shot that's where you notice the flu-like symptoms. But like I said, the older population, or the older you are, the least amount of symptoms people are having. Now, I ain't saying, Dr. Caine, listen, you only had one shot. That's why.
College students, I'm okay. It's those college students, no problem.
Well, let me say this. Let's just bring it home. I think this is one of those times that the media has tricked people again. Those side effects are not very big. They're not, and they go away within 48 hours. Most importantly, let me just tell you this: someone who treats patients in the ER, taking care of many COVID patients. I'm not taking care. Not one person has come to the ER talking about my arm hurts because of the side effect. Don't get me wrong. Nobody wants their arm to hurt. No one wants the flu-like symptoms. But it happens at 99.9% of the time. They resolve just on their own. I highlight that not to minimize it, but to actually highlight it, because
Normalize it.
There you go. Because so many people are using that as a reason.
Yeah,
That
it's
should
normal.
not be a reason.
Yeah, it's not abnormal. It's a normal situation. If you get it, that's normal. That means your body is mounting an immune response, and that's a good thing.
Great. Any more questions, Sonia, Cheryl, or Angela, before we wrap up here?
There was one earlier question, I think it was by Judy Neal, who wanted to know, will there ever be a time when you are able to choose which vaccine you get? That was early on, somebody asked that question.
So I kind of think that you can choose it a little bit depending on your location. We have multiple sites here now in Indianapolis, Indiana, and you can call ahead and ask whichever that vaccine site is and just say, hey, which one are you offering? And sometimes they will offer multiple vaccines. We were doing Pfizer and Moderna for a while. So if you can try it that way, just call. And this is a site I may want to go to, and just call and ask which one you're offering.
Okay.
So, and that's wonderful for Indianapolis, and I wish that everyone were that advanced, Dr. Caine. But if you're in the Prince George's County, Maryland, and many other states.
And I know Prince George's County. I used to work at Hopkins a long time ago, so I know about that county very well.
So, and if you're in the Maryland area and many other states, I would encourage you all, whatever shot's available to you,
yes,
take that shot. Do not wait trying to get another shot, because I think it may not be in any place.
I think it's very dangerous with the virulent strain. So I agree wholeheartedly with that past statement you just made, for sure.
Yeah, I think what's going to determine what vaccine is available to you is whether or not that facility can house large numbers of vials? Do they have the refrigeration and the freezers or the technology to house the vials that they have? Is there going to be issues with shipping? Maybe because of how far it is, there's a snowstorm, they can't get it. So there's so many variables that are going to determine which vaccine is in your area. And I would say largely none of those variables have anything to do with which one is best. It's just which one is available.
And every single one of those 3 vaccines prevents 100% deaths. Everything.
Right.
That's
That's a
the
good
main
point.
thing you got to remember. They
Bottom line.
equally prevent 100% deaths.
Hey, now this information for you listeners is gold. Gold. While they have the different periods of time where people are supposed to get vaccinated, the 1A and the 1B, what is going on in Maryland and it's going on in many different states. For those people who want to get, I want to encourage everyone, follow the rules and stay in line and stay in order. However, what is going on here is that for many of the places, people are going towards the end of the day and saying, hey, do you have any extra vials and vaccine left over, especially if you have the Pfizer and the Moderna, or because once they thaw that, they cannot use it.
Right.
It's better to vaccinate someone than to vaccinate no one. And to make you feel better, you're not taking any one spot, because often what happens is that people sign up on multiple sites and therefore they may not show up.
That's right.
On that
It
day.
happens a lot to us in Indianapolis, so definitely.
So I would highly encourage you that if you can get vaccinated at the end of the day, do it. Now, this part's key. So keep in mind, now I need everyone to listen up to me on this part. This part's key. Have you noticed that the most vulnerable populations are older people as well as people of color? And there are many different reasons for that, but a new study just came out and it discusses vitamin D level. No, I'm not talking about multiple vitamins. I mean vitamin D levels. What it shows is that people who are vitamin D deficient are more likely to have a negative outcome. But this newest study shows that also being vitamin D deficient makes you more likely to contract COVID as well. Here's my point. Follow me. 34% of Americans are vitamin D deficient. 82% of Black Americans are, and 64% of older people are. Here's why. The darker you are, the less efficient you are at converting sunlight to vitamin D. Yep. 90% of our vitamin D comes from being exposed to the sun. The older you are, of any color, because the skin changes, the less efficient you are at converting sunlight to vitamin D. So hence, you may very well likely be vitamin D deficient and not even know it. I would encourage you to talk to your primary care doctor, possibly get a vitamin D level. In the meantime, there are certain foods that are rich in vitamin D. Dairy products, fatty fish like mackerel and salmon. And again, the first study came out, which had verified that if you're vitamin D deficient, you start off behind the 8 ball as it relates to COVID. So that's what you can do while you're waiting. And to you conspiracy theorists, look it up. The science is there. And we want to make sure that we maximize our immune system just in case something happens. That's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
That may be the most important tip that's going to come out of this seminar. Hey.
Oh, man. And I get it.
Sorry.
And Dr. John gets credit for it.
Sorry, Dr. Tin. That may be
Excuse
the
me.
most
Let Dr. Caine speak. Go ahead, ma'am.
And it had to come from a man making that recommendation, darn it.
All these women on this panel and Dr. Geoff, he made the comment.
The hater.
We gotta do better next time, ladies.
I know, I do.
There was one question that came in.
Well, Sonia, can I ask a question of Dr. Geoff real quick about what the topic that we're on right now? Thanks. So I heard you say do not rely on supplements, would rather look to like food sources for vitamin D. But what about those people who are lactose intolerant or who have fish allergies? Would you recommend that they take supplements at that time?
So
in that case,
I wordsmith very, very carefully because, and like, here's why, and follow me, everyone. Nothing we say, and I can speak for the other providers on here, should be taken as medical advice, is for information only. If you need to supplement, and like many people do, you should talk to your primary care doctor. Here's a freebie. But Dr. Fauci, who's older, he takes 6,000 units of vitamin D every day. 6,000 units. And just one more point. I'm glad you brought it back to me. So we can all agree that Donald Trump, when he was president, was the most powerful man in the world, had access to the best of care. Can we all agree with that? Do you know that as part of his special cocktail, there were 3 vitamins that they gave him? They gave him vitamin D, zinc, which is shown to be protective against COVID as well, and melatonin. If the president gets those as part of his treatment, I would encourage people to talk to their primary care doctor and see about, should you be on vitamin D, zinc, and melatonin.
Good point.
Thank you.
Good points. Sonia, you have one more?
Yes, I believe from when I've been scrolling through, this is the last one. And it came after we were talking about people getting vaccinated and then wilding out. So the question was from Julia Hillary, is when the people are vaccinating the population, are they giving any type of information to individuals to reference so that possibly they know how long before they develop the antibodies?
So I think it's probably going to vary at different locations or different sites. So, but we tried to provide information related to that about telling them, because we're concerned for the safety issues, that they think just because I've got vaccinated, I'm okay right now. So we try to have a significant amount of education related to it. We try to have frequently asked questions with answers related to it. But I will say it will probably vary based on what site you go to.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Michelle, let me also say, I've included a crisis kit in there where it gives you the preventive dosages for most of the vitamins that I mentioned, as well as the treatment dosages. And that actually came, and it comes from a hospital protocol that I simply cut and paste. But again, I would highly encourage you all, especially if you're darker like me, if you're older, to make sure that you check and see if you're vitamin D deficient.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. I think we are at the close of the show. If any of the panelists want to give a 2-second blurb, or if you're good with what you just said, we can leave it at that. But I just want to make sure we got everything covered here, because this has been great information. It's like, I love talking to y'all, because every time we get together, it's like, you know, family, really it is. We learn, we exchange, we have fun. So I almost hate to let it go, but I'm gonna give you like 30 seconds each. If you have anything you want to leave us with, or if you pass, you can just say pass. I'm okay with that too. We'll start with, let's start with Dr. Caine.
I think the most important thing is that, you know, you have to be comfortable making your decision for yourself. And if you have any doubt, continue to just get information. But we don't want ever in any way to have someone force you to do something that you may not feel comfortable with. But seek out that information, be observant, and we hope that with the information that we're providing, and as you see loved ones and colleagues around you getting vaccinated, hopefully there is a mechanism that you can use to protect yourself and your loved ones. But never feel uncomfortable about making a decision that you're just not yet ready at. We want you to be ready and feel comfortable about the decision that you're making. And I think I'd love to hear Dr. Coleman's perspective related to that, especially with her parents.
Well, we're gonna go to Dr. Lisa right now. 30 seconds for you.
Yep. Well, and that's what I was saying earlier, is what I've been doing is sharing with people information beyond my household. Well, and my parents, of course, but trying to reach other people who I know, elderly, who don't have access to the information. Again, sit down with them, you know, with your iPad, whatever, watch this video. Dr. Caine's done some other videos on YouTube. You know, there's information out there, CDC, to help them so people don't feel that you're pushing a decision down their throat. I agree. But just be a support. As they say, it takes a village. Just help be part of the village to keep us all safe.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dr. Ten?
So what I would say is healthcare in this country is purely voluntary, purely voluntary. Nobody will make you stay healthy. We won't do it. We can't do it. So it's your decision. It's your choice. We're not here to push any agendas. We're just giving kind of our medical knowledge and our advice as, you know, as we see it and what we've experienced. So just remember, no one's going to make you do anything, not now, probably not ever in this country. Medical care is completely voluntary. Nobody's going to make you get healthy. That's on you. But whatever decision you make, wear a mask, strap up, wrap it up, mask it up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Ten. And Dr. Geoff, we're going to close with you.
Great. I think that Dr. Ten makes a very good case. No one's going to make you do it. But keep in mind, when you travel out of the country, some countries, they require you to have certain vaccinations. I will not be surprised if this time next year you won't be able to go on certain flights or different places without being vaccinated. And for those of you all who are concerned about you don't trust everything, look, if you trust your primary care doctor, if you trust going for your visits, if you get sick and you plan on coming to the ER, all that is science. All that is science. So rid yourself if you don't trust science, because you really do. I would encourage you to trust science, and look, don't fall for this flip-flop. Them tricking us into thinking we don't want to get vaccinated, ask you all these itsy bitsy questions. Choose to save your life. Choose to get vaccinated. Choose to save your child's life, because we need you here as part of this trouble. So stop all these silly questions. Get vaccinated so that you can be here this time next year.
Can I say one more thing, Michelle? Just one last thing.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. If you choose not to get vaccinated, but you still eating greasy food, ain't losing weight, still smoking, still drinking, you might not want to take your chances with COVID. So remember, if you decide you don't want that vaccine and you say, I'm going to take my chances with COVID, you got to clean your life up. You can't be doing that same stuff that's bringing you down, causing obesity, raising your blood pressure and your sugar. You got to get yourself right. That's all I got to say.
Right. Thank you. That is an excellent point. Excellent point. Well, everyone, this is the end again. I hate it because I love this group. I love it. And it's always a joy to have you here. And thank you, Dr. Caine, for joining us for this go round. So with that, I'm just going to do my thank yous here, and we're going to close out. Again, thank you, Dr. Caine, Dr. Geoff, Dr. Ten, and Dr. Lisa for your insight, your wisdom, your information, your wit and fun. I mean, you made this an enjoyable session like always. I'd like to thank my moderators, Angela, Cheryl, and Sonia. I'd like to thank our technical supervisor, Willis Peavy, who you don't see, but this couldn't be without him. So thank you, Willis. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you in SMAC Nation for taking the time out of your evening to come and visit with us and learn a little. I hope this was very helpful for you. One of the things I want you to know, you can watch this on the replay on our Facebook page, as well as we will have this uploaded on our new YouTube channel. So make sure you go there and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And again, this is it. Thank you very much, everyone, and good night.
Thank you.
Stay black.